Welcome to the show. Now, more intrigues in the People's Democratic Party as the PDP prepares for its presidential primary election on Saturday. The party's primary election elections in the governorship, senatorial, House of Reps, and state houses of assembly congresses across the country have been marred by withdrawals from aspirants vying for different positions across the country. Now, the most surprising of them all can be said to be that of Peter Obi, one of the party's leading presidential aspirants. As the presidential primary election approaches, how prepared are the remaining 14 aspirants in the party to head for Saturday? Well, for more on this, I have in the studio with me Prince Daniel, who is the former director of information in one of the major news channels in Nigeria and now a spokesperson of the Tambuwal campaign organization. And we will be joined from our Lagos studio by Professor Anthony Kila, who is a policy strategist, to help us take a look at this ahead of Saturday. So good to have you. Let's start with your own campaign organization ahead of Saturday. How are you preparing for the presidential primary?
All right. First, thank you very much for having me. It's such a privilege to be on this platform. And as far as Saturday is concerned, all we are waiting for is to pick the ticket, celebrate, and prepare for the general elections. I don't know if that sounds arrogant.
Yeah, I mean, because you have a lot of top contenders. You have the political party strategizing ahead of time. But I just want you to tell us how the atmosphere is like at the People's Democratic Party right now ahead of Saturday. Have you done all that's necessary within your campaign organization? How are you doing last minute reach out to delegates to ensure that you have a successful outing?
Yes, we went round, as you know, with every other contestant for consultations. We went from north to south, east to west. We met the contestant. We had their heartbeats. We know what they want for the moment, because they all agree. We all understand that Nigeria is challenged. As a matter of fact, if Nigeria is not challenged, why are we contesting? Or why is the principal contesting? Because before I even go into that, it is important that we put in perspective what everybody knows, that when your external debt is already about 38.005 trillion, you know you're in trouble. And then when you go further and see that your inflation rate as it stands now, according to the MBS, is about 15.7%, which is that it came from 15.6% at the close of last year. So what that means is that at the end of the day, you might just be in trouble already, since unemployment rate has already been consistent around 32.7%, and is also going to 33%. Why I'm giving this perspective is so that we first even understand what is going to dominate the discussion as far as the preparedness. So coming back to the preparations, we are ready. The spirit is high. We just finished our consultations on a very high note, having engaged with the contestants. We know their heartbeats. We know that apart from insecurity from the people in Maiduguri, you also be talking about the Lake Chad Basin. When you move to Kogi, you'll be talking about the Ajaokuta Steel. When you move to Niger, so the principal understands all the issues.
Okay, very interesting indeed from the Tambuwal campaign organization there. And I'm now being told that we're being joined by Professor Anthony Kila, and so good to have you on the show. Tell us, with Peter Obi's withdrawal from the presidential campaign of the People's Democratic Party, how should the other remaining top 14 contestants be looking at it? He actually mentioned some of the things that he said have made him not to be able to, come out and stand with the party any longer. Do you think that these things, although which he didn't go into detail, can also affect any of the presidential aspirants?
Well, I think, when you have 15 aspirants and then one pulls out, you have an advantage for the other 14. In a very cynical but realistic way, that means the votes that Obi was contending or taking away from the rest is now up for grabs. We've done some analysis to see where people are strong state by state and region by region. Peter Obi's strongest area is somewhere around the southwest, around Anambra, for example. It means that other contestants can go for that, so that perhaps the second choice in that place will now become the first choice. That is within the PDP, and that is related to the hopefuls for delegates. So the delegates that were Peter Obi inclined are now up for grabs for other people. That is the major sort of partisan consideration about that. In terms of personal political consideration for Peter Obi, we wait to see where he goes next, and it's going to be a test of popularity to see how much votes he can gather in the public.
And Professor Kila, we've seen the aspirants being narrowed down to about 4 or 5. Some others will tell you they have 6. We have the likes of Bukola Saraki, we have the likes of Atiku Abubakar, Aminu Tambuwal, we have the likes of Bala Mohammed, and it just goes on like that. With the whole arrangements now, how do you foresee any of these presidential aspirants at the moment, their strengths and their weaknesses, before we come back to him in the studio here?
Well, I think, yes, as somebody was saying, everybody's gone round, and people have done their bit. We're looking at the result and the consequence of it now. It's a continuous game. We shall only know the truth after the voting has happened. But for now, there's a clear pattern, which we've seen. And the pattern, beyond the rumors and gist and almost probable thing of influence of money and things like that, I think this particular cycle of elections, we're going to be in for some surprises, because as we've seen so far in the PDP, we have seen some people who we thought they were too big to lose eventually clearly lose. I'm not going to mention names, but those who follow politics will have seen that in the senatorial and in the House of Reps, and indeed gubernatorial, some big names have lost. So we're going to be in for some surprise. But that's a general surprise. I think analysts will not be very surprised, because there's a very clear pattern for those studying the PDP thing that has been very clear. So, for example, if you take the PDP and juxtapose it with Nigeria, distributing it into 6 zones, and then under those 6 zones, you have 60 states for 5 states in the southeast. There are patterns there, which also tells you the strategies of the politician. You have a Tambuwal man with you there, so we start with that. I think one of the first things that the Tambuwal campaign seems to have done is to consolidate the Northwest. And that gives their campaign a very strong edge, because Aminu Tambuwal seems to be the only person coming in with a whole region behind him, whilst everybody is taking, their beats left and right. And we need to see how this has been done out of luck or capacity, because in reality, last time around when Tambuwal contested, he had to split the Northwest with quite a few people. This time around, there seems to be an open field for him there. Then we go to Northeast, where if we go by where people come from, you will assume that Atiku will have a field day there, but apparently that is not the case. Some states are up for grab. I know, for example, that Borno State is not looking in the bucket of Abubakar Atiku. I know from patterns that we're following that some of the states are not exactly going there. I know, for example, that Adamawa State seems to be full in the hands of Abubakar Atiku. So that means he hasn't got a whole region behind him, and that is going to affect a lot, because once you cannot come up with 5-6 states solidly behind you, it's going to be a problem. The new, really new contender, the new kid on the block, is, I think, the River State Governor Wike, who has made quite an heroic arrival on stage. Now, the thing about Wike is this. I think he's liked bits and pieces. He's liked by people because it's colorful, because it's exuberant. But I suspect that, and the patterns tend to show, that his style and personality does not seem to be popular with delegates who are sort of more, they're collegial and calmer. unlike the rest of us, these delegates want somebody who's going to treat them well. You know, they want somebody who can win and who they can relate with. They want a strong party man. And I think, unlike voters, delegates do not like people who appear to be so strong from day one that perhaps when he gets there, they won't be able to reason with him. And that, I think, is affecting someone like Wike. Wike would have River State with him for sure, but I think he's going to struggle in the Southeast.
Yeah,
I suspect he's going to pick some places. Yes.
Okay, now I just want you to hold on here because
you
brought a new dimension into it. If you look at the last presidential primaries held in Port Harcourt during the last presidential elections, you will see that there was this synergy between Wike and Tambuwal. And I want to ask Tambuwal's spokesman here, do you foresee an alliance, a situation whereby maybe a Wike and Tambuwal reach an alliance to either step down for each other or to just do something so that one of them gets this ticket? Prince, I'm actually talking about
yes,
you.
At this point, nothing can be ruled out politically. But for now, what is very paramount is everybody wants to fly on his own wings up until the end of the campaign. Because if there is anything of such, by now, people would have started discussing, negotiating, talking about where the alliances will come. But in politics, you can't rule out anything. But for now, we are strong in the race, even though we have seen some narratives here and there. They will say it's a 5-man race, 4-man horse, 4-horse race, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, most of the national newspapers have been taking on
that. But again, since the PDP is set to win an election in 2023, anything and everything is possible.
And I want to ask you, I mean, Aminu Tambuwal is from the Northwest. President Muhammadu Buhari would have ended his 8 years in government by next year. Do you think it's actually right for someone from the Northwest to actually succeed President Muhammadu Buhari like your principal is trying to do at the moment?
Yes, well, if you see the sham that Nigeria has become today, you want to begin to apply the doctrine of necessity. And doing so means at this point, it is who has the capacity, the competence, and the character, and not necessarily who is coming from where. And this has been reiterated from our engagement with the delegates. They've all spoken. I'll be honest with you, nobody has talked about it while on the trail, or the consultative trail. Because what they want is that they want the dollar not to wrestle with the naira as it is. And then what they want is that they want to be able to live in peace. What they want is they want economic boom. What they want is they want things to work again. So nobody is talking about who is coming from where. And then
so we should say of the geopolitics for now. That's what you're saying?
Yes. I think the conversation has advanced. Okay. People are asking for different things.
All right, because I mean, Professor Kila, you're actually saying that Tambuwal has a whole region to himself. And I will talk about someone like Atiku Abubakar. I mean, having come from the northeast, and then you see Bala Mohammed coming from the northeast, then you see Wike coming from the south. And then you have the southeast bloc also still being there. I mean, you have the Sam Ohabonwas, the Pius Anyim, and all of that. With the exit of Peter Obi, do you foresee realignments? Do you think any of these other presidential aspirants will be going to Obi's camp to actually harvest some of the delegates that he could have got if he was still in the race?
I can authoritatively tell you they're doing that already. And I think the spokesman there is being diplomatic. I'll tell you what PDP is doing. PDP wants to win. That is, you know, the leaders of the party have looked at themselves and say, we want to win. And they've asked themselves, what is the surest way to win? They have studied some data, they have seen some patterns, and many of them think that they should convey their votes and their support on the candidate that can make them win. And winning is in 2 stages. The second stage is general election, but the first stage is the primary election. So when you see the spokesman being very diplomatic and saying everything is possible, he is not telling the whole truth. I will tell you the whole truth. The whole truth is that we're hearing voices that some party leaders are already working for people to step down for Tambuwal. The argument is that they say Tambuwal fits what the country wants because he's young and because he has votes behind him. And that is why in the next few days, you're going to see a lot of negotiations and running left and right. We have them in the newsroom, and all strategists know that they're trying to move towards that side. PDP wants to come out very strong from their convention, so they're trying to make sure they don't have a lot of conflict, as it were.
And you think Nigerians would accept someone from the northwest of the country as a presidential candidate of the PDP after a Buhari would have completed his 8-year term?
Well, we cannot tell until we go to the vote. I think people who have strong reservations about, people who are very convinced about rotation of power are going to have a bit of problem. But I think the party seems prepared to make that case, to say, look, let us put that aside for now. That is the code that party PDP is using. The code is doctrine of necessity. What they really say in plain English is, look, let's put aside this rotation thing aside. Let's get power. And once we get it, let's give it to somebody that appears to be what Nigeria wants, regardless of where it comes from. Then after that, we shall reset it.
All right.
That is the game they're playing. That, you know, that is the gamble.
Because
the other side, and you see, and this is interesting. It is interesting to know that the other side of the game is this. Those who are close to inside sources will tell you that the way they reason is they are saying, what if we give it to somebody from another region and that person ends up not winning and ABC still wins us? So they're focusing on winning. I think that is where the game is. I argue that they are taking a shortcut. They're just saying, let us win. Who seems to have more that can make us win? And they're rallying around that person. And that is why all of a sudden, people are talking about Tambuwal now.
Well, recalibration, realignment here and there, especially after Peter Obi's exit.
Yeah.
But I just want to, before we end, ask you, the spokesman, Prince, why is it difficult for a lot of Nigerian media actually to give Tambuwal an opportunity? Because unlike in the last presidential primaries of the PDP, during the last presidential elections, we are seeing that the top four are being narrowed down to Atiku, Saraki, Wike, and then Peter Obi before, you know, his exit from the party. Why does it look like it's been difficult narrowing down to Tambuwal in this particular election, primary election?
I can tell you honestly, it's fear. And the fear made it that most of these candidates are spinning stories here and there. And of course, I would confidently say the media is also not helping matters. If not, if you check the trend, even from 2018, somebody who came second with 693 votes couldn't have been ignored. And when that happened, there were 7 contestants from Northwest, and then Atiku from Northeast. So now there are 3 from Northeast, Atiku, Hayatu, and Bala. So how would you do your postulation and say that a Tambuwal who came second with almost 700 votes in the last election with 7 other people will not be on the top 2 or even the first position as it is? Because right now, if we are being honest, he is the candidate to beat. So if the news are spinning here and there, the truth is that Tambuwal is the candidate to beat as it is now, because age is a factor, understanding of Nigeria is a factor, because somebody needs somebody
very quickly.
Yes, somebody is somebody that is vast, somebody who has traveled about 360 constituencies of Nigeria. He understands the problem. He understands the issue. Somebody who understands the rule of law as a legal practitioner, somebody who has been to the legislature, to the rank of the speaker, somebody who is an executive, who understands all the arms of government.
We know it's your job to actually sell this man, but for now we just have to end the show. But Professor Kila, I won't go without asking you this. Do you think that PDP is prepared to give the APC a good fight for its money very quickly in 30 seconds ahead of Saturday's primary election? Well,
I think they are, but the citizens have to decide. I think PDP is hungry for power, and somehow they've convinced themselves that they can save the country, but then it's the citizens would decide. And I think they're doing a lot of preparation. So far, they appear to be more disciplined than the APC, that must be said. You know, but then again, 2023 is a long way to go.
Well, we must thank you so much, Professor Anthony Kila, who has joined us from Lagos, our Lagos studio, and of course, Prince Daniel, who is a spokesman of the Tambuwal campaign organization, here for joining us on the show.